Hey there, welcome to episode 180 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo, as usual. We're recording this at 10:56 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in the Greater Vegas area on Tuesday, July 28, 2026. Usually we publish new episodes of this audio program on Tuesday mornings. We will probably come close. It'll be more like just after lunchtime. Such is the way things work. Today's title and topic, Infra, as in infrastructure. Infra is how the cool kids refer to it today. If you've never heard of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation or perhaps the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, you've come to the right place. We are a Nevada nonprofit corporation, a 501c3 public charity. We formed our nonprofit corporation in June of 2022. We received our determination, I think it was in October. As the Code for Vegas Foundation, we renamed ourselves the following year. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation innovation is a much broader scope, not so limiting as is code. Not everything is code. Not everybody likes to code. Don't give it a second thought. Innovate for Vegas, all you want. No code required. Our purpose statement, by the way, in case you're curious, to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. See, nothing about code in there either. Basically aiming at civic volunteerism, civic innovation, and community elevation. There's a lot of C words. We use the C word a lot. Not that one. We refer to connection, communication, collaboration, civic volunteerism, civic innovation, like I said, community elevation, and there's got to be some more. I think there are. We'll talk about that another time. Infrastructure, today's title and topic. Pardon me, let me get some water here. I'm having my morning chia seeds in water. Delightful. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I will read to you. It's 2 sentences. Our 2 usual links with a minor update in terminology. Trying it out, actually. Nothing is permanent just yet. I think it kind of, it's not a big deal. Not really a material change, just trying to be clear about what we're up to. And then we'll get on with the show. Title, topic, Infra. The summary of today's episode. Every journey may begin with a single step, but that step better be on a navigable path that enables each step first and all that follow. Let's call it infrastructure. The links, as usual, Innovate for Vegas is our domain. INNOVATEFORVEGAS. Innovate for Vegas, no spaces, no other punctuation in there. Innovateforvegas.org is our almost original website. Codeforvegas.org is our legacy. Innovateforvegas.org used to be our main homepage. It is now our cohort homepage. I used to call it the activity homepage. The cohort, those are the civic volunteers who want to participate in our various initiatives aimed at civic innovation and community elevation. Sort of an ongoing thing. We're not a membership organization, but you would sort of technically join initiatives and projects. You would probably work on them more than once. Statistically, maybe that's not as true, but that's the idea. So you would be a member of the cohort, but we're not a member. You don't join from a traditional membership organization perspective. So you can be a part of the cohort, maybe is more correct. You would be a team member in our GitHub teams around initiatives and so on. The main reason for that is to basically keep track of and recognize and celebrate civic volunteer contributions. So if people do put their civic volunteerism in effect and they contribute their time, effort, and expertise in one way or another to our various initiatives and projects, we want to make sure they get credit for that work. So if you're a quote-unquote member of the cohort, you really are there for, hopefully to make progress and to take from it what you will, but we want to make sure that people get credit, attribution, a little bit of celebration now and then. So that's the cohort. The innovateforvegas.foundation website, so same spelling, .foundation, is the website more closely associated with our Nevada nonprofit corporation and our 501c3 public charity. They are not any different. They're totally interchangeable as far as representing the foundation. So this is not a reorg, it's not a DBA, there's nothing like that going on. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation, though, is the facilitating and fiscally sponsored Nevada nonprofit corporation that if you were going to say, hey, where's your bylaws? You would look at the innovateforvegas.foundation website, and we actually are going to publish the bylaws once our new board members have a chance to review our bylaws. And there's one or two things we want to change, and then there's one I want to change, which just needs clarification. So once we do that, we'll publish the documents. They're available anyway if you want. We have a public shared folder in our Google Workspace, and people can view all of our documents and so on if they really want to. So far, we've had nobody clamoring to do that. But yeah, part of being transparent and visible, observable even, goes to the innovateforvegas.foundation website when we facilitate things like the Smarter Smart City Challenge coming up in January of 2027. That will be the contact information associated and so on would be the innovateforvegas.foundation path. And some of our other efforts, so we'll have other domain names and so on, will be affiliated as part of innovateforvegas.foundation, as is innovateforvegas.org, which is where people actually volunteer their time, effort, and expertise to work on community elevating initiatives and so on. Makes perfect sense. I published a newsletter on LinkedIn, which was opened 100 times, I think, and then who knows if anybody actually read it, describing this org chart and how things fit together. So we'll publish that stuff on our websites so that they're interchangeably informative in that regard. And over time, I mean, it's not a big deal, actually. We could very easily have had subdirectories or subdomains, right? innovateforvegas.org/foundation or whatever. But we live in the modern era. Might as well take advantage of these various new top-level domains. And here we are. Okay, enough about that. Infrastructure is a lot. By the way, if my voice might start drying out here, the weather's been weird. So we'll see. See if see how annoying this gets. I'll apologize now, or I'll thank you for your patience with my dry voice. Maybe I'll pause in a moment and see if I can gulp down some more water. Infrastructure is a lot, though. If you are a cloud nerd, then you may reflexively think of assembling your various services somewhere on Azure, as people pronounce it. I just say Azure. AWS, maybe other platforms, similar. Google Compute Cloud, or whatever they call that. Is it GCP? Google Compute Platform? Whatever it is. Perhaps via the infrastructure as code tools we've all come to know and love, or not so much. You would not be wrong, but you would also not be completely correct, only partially correct. It is bigger than that, and includes that. It includes the cloud or tech side of things, hosting information and applications and so on. In my observation over the life of our foundation so far, we're in our fifth fiscal year. Infrastructure is often undervalued until something is missing, and that's not just for ours. This is for an all-volunteer organization. It is worthwhile, in my own view anyway, to try to predict those gaps ahead of time so infrastructure debt doesn't pop up at the worst of times. And I don't think this applies it certainly doesn't apply only to our organization. It doesn't only apply to civic, volunteer, or generally volunteer organizations. It's generally a thing. Sometimes when stuff is working, whatever the stuff is, you don't really think about it. And then when it's not working, suddenly it's the most important thing. So I like to have things working in an automatable fashion. I have a brief story at the end of this section, which I hope I will remember to mention. The term debt comes up a lot nowadays, financial and otherwise. This is not financial, though, not directly. It could cost money, but it could cost money to fix, and it could cost money if it's not fixed. But rather more like a to-do list. And as the to-do list gets longer, the likelihood that something on that to-do list will be a lower priority than it really should be, and that will be and that will become apparent at the most inconvenient of times. And that's a real thing. That really does happen all the time. Probably the most common version of this is technical debt or tech debt, or some feature goes unimplemented that really should be. Some tool or platform update is not applied when it really should be. Countless problems have arisen from they didn't update their version of whatever, and all of the records were compromised. Massive data breach because somebody didn't update their Apache version. And then the easy one, bugs that go unfixed. And all of these and more can be problematic over time, yes, but can be really problematic when they make themselves known at the least convenient times. So it's bad when you don't follow up on these items that really should be. So your tech debt grows. And there's other forms of it too. I've not drawn a complete picture, but it can be really problematic when suddenly one day, 1 week, one moment, suddenly things stop working. And then you find out, it's because, we could have not had this scenario unfold, and it ends up being far more expensive in time or lost data or frustration or all of these things and more than if it had just been tackled earlier. So I think it's useful it's useful and a learning experience to stay on top of this. I've had interactions with people who have kind of half joined in on what we're up to. At least they've been around for conversations. I don't want to blame, I don't want to make this sound like you whippersnappers, but maybe we'll call it people with less experience in the real world, especially in the workaday world, especially as modern technology continues to move only faster, have said, I don't want to worry about this stuff now. You just get it running and then worry about it later. That's usually the beginning of a really good story about how things went really badly. Yeah, then suddenly stuff stopped working and we weren't sure what was where and how it was supposed to, and then getting it back to online took some of us have been there and done that. Some of us are about to be there, and they will have learned the lesson. Don't learn it the hard way. There is a little bit more challenge for any undertaking that has no budget. That is, we don't have money to spend on managed services and outsourced expertise and so on. So it's kind of a homebrew and using what we can on the cheap. By the way, we could probably try, apply for grant money and so on. That's bootstrapping is the way so far. Ours is an all volunteer organization, of course, and we don't really have expenses, luckily. So we have not driven donations so much so far. Time has passed. All of this is still true. But as we turn into the wind to commence our real launching efforts, it's kind of an aircraft carrier reference, either having elements in place already or having some familiar with the how and where and whatnot is a good thing. Having some familiarity, having some people familiar. So knowing what's coming and what we're trying to accomplish and all that. Let me fix that. Familiarity. There we go. So yeah, kind of knowing what's coming up and then being able to account for that early rather than finding out the hard way later. These are all good things, maybe great things, because once those headwinds are there, and because we want them to be, we do not need extra drag, right? So when you turn an aircraft carrier into the wind to launch, so you don't have wind shear problems and so on, because air moving across the ocean is like that sometimes. So you do it on purpose, but now we have to make sure we're ready and do things that don't waste time. So if we do small things early, we can avoid trying to fix big things later. This comes down to planning ahead and putting in some effort early rather than more effort later and possibly amidst chaos. So hopefully not going to have the chaos and whatnot. I will tell you a brief story. I was doing some consulting for a company that had already been working with a consulting company in another country. I will say that they are presently involved in a war. They did not plan it. So you could probably figure out where that is. So I was working with a third party, but the client company and then their existing consultancy. And so we were there to do some code review and just take a look at things. And then this war started happening. So the questions were along the lines of, hey, if we need to reproduce the infrastructure, the cloud infrastructure that you have in place right now, do you have your infrastructure coded? Is there a way to reproduce it? And they said, no, we built it all through the user interface on Amazon Web Services console by hand. So we can't really reproduce it. That's an example of could have done the small thing early, but now we have a huge problem today because we had to basically go through and try to audit. And I mean, that has gotten easier since. This was several years ago. You can probably figure out exactly what day it is, but it was 4 years ago. That was a lot of stuff has evolved since then. But yeah, cloud is an example of it's really, really handy to be able to rebuild and reproduce that infrastructure if the worst of things begins to happen. So a little mini lesson learned. I don't know if they learned it, but they got other stuff going on. So let's start with the easier stuff. When we first formed our nonprofit corporation in Nevada, we set up our Google Workspace as our primary digital information store for documents and, of course, email. We started paying out of pocket. So at the time it was like $10 a person, I think it was. Knowing that Google for Nonprofits would make this a gratis service, that means free for nonprofits. Though the fine print, as everyone either knows or finds out by now, they know though that's you may not have found out yet, but I'm going to tell you. Google for Nonprofits is Google for 501c3s, they're non-educational entities, so you can't be a 501c3 school. They have a different one, Google for Education. So yeah, Google for Nonprofits is Google for charities, charities only. You can't be a nonprofit 501c6. No. In anticipation of our eventual nonprofit determination, we had everything in place to get started. The determination from the IRS appeared like magic, and our infrastructure costs went down to zero for this item. Luckily, our 1023-EZ filing made the delay minimal. Our out-of-pocket for the Google Workspace was small. And we've had free Google Workspace ever since. When you have free Google Workspace for your nonprofit, you can do things like setting up multiple domains and having all kinds of different email addresses for roles and actual people and so on. It's been fairly useful to have that service for free. Not everybody's a fan of Google Workspace. I'll try to be nice since they are our platform of choice at a very reasonable price. But yeah, there are some things that could be better. There are some things about Google that could be less evil. We can leave it there. I'm just quoting their old mantra, don't be evil. Is it don't be evil? Don't do evil. Don't be evil, I think it was. Doesn't matter. That's ancient history now. There are many reasons to dislike them, but GitHub, Microsoft, does have a liberal policy regarding their nonprofit options, free for the team tier, so GitHub team, and they do not, so it's free. We have a gratis team organization. They do not require a 501c3 determination ahead of time. In fact, technically, you don't even need to be a nonprofit. You could be one person doing interesting things. So it's kind of a case by case. So they made Google for Nonprofits more publicly available and visible at some point, and the turnaround time on getting the tier, the gratis tier access and whatnot approved, it became much quicker, like days instead of over a month. I'm not complaining. It was fine. We didn't, we were not blocked by whatever the feature set is of team tier, but it's interesting that they do. You can be anybody. You don't have to be a 501c3. So that's pretty neat, actually. GitHub is traditionally thought of as a coder platform, at least according to the casual observer. Oh, I'm not a coder. I don't use GitHub, but it is actually quite useful for managing projects for free. It's not. There are better tools that cost real money and are much more intense. But for managing the projects as we are doing, projects and initiatives, because we can, the scope and scale that we are tackling, it's fine. Because we can keep track of contributors and their contributions, which is important for our recognition and attribution policy. So GitHub enables a very straightforward create a username account, and then you get added to a team. And then if you can navigate your way around issues and discussions and so on, all of these can accumulate as contribution to particular initiatives and projects. And recognition and attribution is important to us because it has so often not been important to other organizations working in the civic volunteer, civic innovation space. So there you go. Okay, off my soapbox. By keeping track of these along the way, we avoid accumulating what we could call attribution debt. And I ran into that with Code for America in one case. I asked them who the volunteers were that were participating in one of their projects that they had just announced. They just made a big press release. They only mentioned the paid employees of Code for America as project management and so on. And they said, oh, we haven't kept track. And if you want to, we can try to get, come on. We can always have current information about who was a part of a project, for example, and be sure that they get credit for their time, effort, and expertise that they've contributed. There you go. Not everything is code, but giving credit where it is due sort of is everything. That's not code, but it is everything. Why do something if you know? Well, you can opt out, but isn't it nice to know that your name is going to be on something that you spent your time and effort on and shared your expertise with? Yes. There are some physical world elements to consider as well, like a statutory address and a mailbox, both in the same place if possible. In our earliest days, we had permission to use the International Innovation Center in downtown Las Vegas as our statutory address and as our mailbox. So we probably get 1 or 2 pieces of mail a year, if that, maybe some junk mail, solicitation, unwanted solicitation emails. Even though we did not pay for a hot desk or any other services at the co-work space known as the International Innovation Center at the time, it was managed by the city of Las Vegas. And we were told, in fact, that the city was happy to see more businesses use the address for the sake of statistics in the innovation district. So we were not only the Innovate for Vegas Foundation in the city of Las Vegas, but located conveniently at the International Innovation Center in the innovation district in downtown Las Vegas. So how can you go wrong? This has changed more recently, which highlights what non-technical infrastructure debt can be. Since the International Innovation Center is no longer managed by City of Las Vegas, but in fact by Startup NV, and they're a completely different mindset. And the person who enabled our use case retired. So an external address with a paper mailbox, that is a mailbox to receive paper mail, paper mailbox facility has been identified to get away from CLV, from the Innovation Center, and so on. A lesson learned with minor difficulty. Free is not always good, as it turns out, especially when you're dealing with our local government. So try to avoid that if at all possible. I have a business license story. Luckily, we don't need one because we're a nonprofit. Yeah, try to avoid. I'm going to go with Ron Swanson on that one. The next layer above the easy stuff, easy in quotes, of course, we have GitHub for free, and GitHub can be used for hosting website content. Especially, I think everybody knows that if you're a GitHub user at all, especially if it is static content. So establishing a simple one-pager website was an early accomplishment. It kind of fit into our IRS filings and so on. So they can check, so we have some disclosures and some basic information and so on. This does not make web designer time free. So we built a one-pager, and to be honest, it has gone largely unchanged for too long. We established our LinkedIn page for outreach and engagement in the LinkedIn silo. This was very early on. We formed our nonprofit in June of 2022, and we had our LinkedIn page up and running shortly thereafter, just as a kind of a, hey, we exist announcement path. And while somewhat useful initially for exactly those, we only have just over 1,000 followers after about 4 years today. And LinkedIn is not actually worthwhile for our purposes because 1,000 is just not enough. So it is deprecated. Deprecated means not used. It's not going away just yet, and it's not going away anytime really soon. But outreach, inviting people to follow it, posting announcements and upcoming and calls to action doesn't do anything. So it will exist into the future. The newsletter that we have been publishing, these will be for updates and will point to our web content rather than having original content on the LinkedIn platform, et cetera, et cetera. The internet's much bigger, much better. We have a gratis for nonprofits Canva subscription. If you're familiar with Canva, it's for creating visual assets pretty much. It's useful for us for creating cover art for our weekly audio program and header images for Open Graph friendly posts. So you got to have a link and a title and a description, and of course the image, and that appears in feeds and so on. And of course, this includes posts on our LinkedIn page and in general. So if we link to our website on LinkedIn, we need to have an open graph image to display so that it's not just a pure text item, and nobody looks at those. Nobody looks at our other stuff either. For the modern world, got to have visualization. Imagery is a part of getting noticed. That's just the way it is. Canva is actually a fairly capable and extremely convenient cloud-based tool for our basic imagery needs, and enables our reasonably attractive presence online if only there were someone with actual skill and aesthetic sense to take this to the next level. A visual design debt is in place, perhaps. But it is absolutely useful. We make use of it all the time. You can't beat the price, and we don't use, I mean, you can do whole team stuff and probably run service bureaus and whatnot. Our uses are fairly minimal. So Canva for free, it's hard to beat, really. Despite the oft repeated comments about nonprofits not having or making money, the truth is there are always outflows, and there's always the possibility of inflows someday. We haven't really been driving donations. That might change. That will change, in fact. Establishing our online banking and fintech tools was rather straightforward. Did that really early. Making use of mercury.com. That's not a plug. It's just a fact. We use their financial platform. It's not a bank. We use Mercury for accounts payable and receivable, a Stripe account for payment processing if somebody wants to make a donation, for example, and that's routed to our Mercury checking account. Those are all pretty straightforward. Believe it or not, we have received some minor donations via Stripe, a total of less than $40. But as they say, a dime is a dime. For some reason, we had a flurry of like $1 donations. So a lot of that goes to fees. What is it? 25 cents plus 2%. So you're going to keep like 73 cents, I think it is. 70 cents or so. Side note, our low donation receipts have made our annual filing of the $9.90 a piece of cake. Always the postcard version, even though we're beyond our third fiscal year, we don't, if you don't have any money coming in, not much to worry about. Mercury supports virtual payment cards, multiple users with permissions, more than useful reporting, basically everything we need for the foreseeable and for free. And Stripe offers a reduced fee for charitable organizations. So neato. How can you go wrong? Setting that up was pretty straightforward. Like I said, I happen to have in my work history worked in the payment processing industry, both on the transaction processing side and the sort of the PCI compliant client side. So managing and dealing with all this stuff is I mean, I don't want to diminish it too much, but it's pretty straightforward. It's good to have that all set up ahead of time. Speaking of lessons and corrections, things that we learned along the way, things that I learned along the way, certainly. The International Innovation Center situation is mildly disappointing, of course, but not surprising. Kind of get used to that kind of stuff here. Something similar occurred with the name of our organization when we rebooted Code for Vegas, which we ended up forming as the Code for Vegas Foundation. That's the actual thing we formed in June of 2022. We received our determination, it was either late October or November 2022. We ended up forming Code for Vegas Foundation, independent of Code for America, because they were going through the revisioning process, capital R, capital V, and then Code for America did not want us to use that name. And eventually they sunset the entire brigade program, so it's all moot. But in the meantime, and I've gone over this story a few times, so there's no need to repeat it at this point. So the bottom line is the name change to Innovate for Vegas Foundation was another mild change of plans. It was like a distraction, new domain, updating or amending our articles with the state, then notifying the IRS of the name change, and generally getting the word out. But we got it all sorted out immediately, and so there was no debt moving forward, right? So by the time we had to change our name, the thing that took the longest was getting our IRS update back, receiving confirmation that we had changed our name and everything was fine. We started using Discord early on for our general online cohort conversations. We would point people to it. We had an invite link on our website, join the conversation and so on. We had different channels set up for different, for our meetups and for other, so, okay, it's fine. Can't beat the price, free. And it was mildly useful when we facilitated the NASA Space Apps Challenge in 2023. It was in October. So we had a way for people to communicate in real time through the course of the hackathon, which I think lasted for 40 hours, give or take. So, okay, convenient for that. But Discord has issues. It has had issues. It certainly has issues and has only had more issues over the last year or so, certainly even more recently than that, with age policy and some privacy questionable practices as far as age determination and confirmation and so on. We stopped using it after the Space Apps Challenge, though. Our server was pretty much dead before that. Nobody was really using it. It became my personal blog. I was updating, but nobody was consuming. Kind of like LinkedIn. The need for siloed communications is essentially zero for most things that we're doing. There's really no reason to have secret or private or siloed conversations about a hackathon coming up. So yeah, we don't need the wall separating us from everybody. And since we are an any age friendly organization with everything we do, the Discord age policy changes as they are figuring that out may be problematic. Having people between 13 and 18, for example, have to deal with Discord as a third party and their policies, not really essential. We're not doing anything private private chat in this case is not something we would want to facilitate anyway, just from a community safety standpoint, right? We don't want to encourage young people, minors, to engage with adults. There's really no need. It's a door we don't need to go through, and we don't have to keep it locked. We just don't need that doorway. Keep the discussions open. Piece of cake. Discord is not it, simply. The cost was $0 and a little bit of time. Lesson learned. We're not using Discord. Now, social media in Vegas is tricky. A tremendous amount of energy goes into content creation for tourism, for people visiting the area, or for locals who get out and about and enjoy Vegas, the fun, the full breadth of the fun economy. So local and sort of local content creators spend a lot of time on Vegas-themed channels, a lot of stuff about food, a lot of content around the fun economy in general. So food, summer pools, what to do in the winter. Yeah, the list goes on. But it's pretty much focused on people who are visiting here in that fun economy. Not to mention real estate for people considering relocation to the oasis in the desert. Those are kind of interesting, but they're all kind of the same. Don't move to this neighborhood. But not a lot about innovation, startups, and the smaller elements of our economy, even though I can't remember where I checked this, but the National Chamber of Commerce data suggests there's about an 80% small businesses without employees number floating around somewhere nationally. I think it was Clark County. I can't remember if it was the state. Might have been Clark County. Has a similar statistic. It's right around 80 or 81, 82% of small businesses in the greater Vegas area, Clark County, don't have employees. So they're small businesses. And those don't really get attention, even though there's a lot of them. And they make up a sizable chunk of small business in general. So they're not going to get attention if it's one person. They're doing services, they're doing consulting, maybe they outsource, so they don't have employees technically. These are boring topics, apparently. Our use of Instagram, Twitter, and of course LinkedIn let me say not our use necessarily, but our benefit. So our use of Instagram, Twitter, and of course LinkedIn had been extremely low on the ROI scale. That's return on investment. And there has been a similar experience with peer organizations beyond Vegas. You don't see a lot of interaction on social media platforms, Twitter, now Blue Sky, similar. We have a Mastodon account on the Fossadon.org server. Almost no interaction there as well. So Instagram, we had essentially zero. LinkedIn, we have a lot of followers, but zero engagement. So traditional social media is hit or miss. And for us, it's mostly a miss. So lesson learned. We don't spend a lot of time and energy on that because it doesn't yield anything. Almost zero return on that investment. Inspiration, though. We take it, we run with it. When we first got started back in about February or March of 2022, before we actually formed, Open Transit was our first project hackathon. Exactly 3 people participated. Neither of the other 2 are still around, so that's the way it is. And it is still an official initiative today that really could use a lot more attention than it has received since then, to be honest. This is an example, though, of looking around at gaps and possibilities and drafting a possible solution to spend our efforts upon. Same goes for our infrastructure based on some of those lessons learned, and then, what's on the horizon and trying to think proactively ahead of time. Getting the word out has proven to be a substantial challenge. There is a lot of cultural baggage around here in Greater Vegas. Bottom line, we cannot possibly rely on noisy LinkedIn and not interested social media in general, nor can we rely on our legacy press outlets to take an interest in our efforts. This applies to a few vertical areas, not merely volunteer civic innovation orgs such as ours, but it most definitely applies to ours. To be honest, I don't reach out to our local press outlets anymore. It's simply not worthwhile. This drives our My Muni and Welcome initiatives and is motivation in general for our approach based on our own learning experience. So decentralized, enable more people to contribute to the conversations, don't make them private, hidden behind accounts and paywalls and so on. A smarter smart city, but a smart city should be able to communicate with itself without asking permission. A global innovation hub such as Greater Vegas can do better when it comes to sharing information with a public that might actually be interested in more than crime and the fun economy. Arguably the same thing. No, but seriously, our local press outlets are much more concerned with crime, politics, real estate, bigger business, who won the latest jackpot, whether they were local or not, what buildings are being demolished or constructed, which professional sports teams are moving or not moving to the Greater Vegas area. Small things like innovation for the future, simply not interesting, allegedly. Now, other lessons have been learned over our 4 years revolving around day-to-day operation of our cohort to collaborate effectively on our initiatives and efforts in general, and tools and methods to engage with our peer organizations out in the world. This is not a new idea. The whole entire open source movement, which is mostly software, but applies also to hardware and even nowadays science and biotech and all kinds of things. Even AI models are, if not open source, then open weight. But there's some open source stuff out there too. There is the Agile for Volunteers initiative to accommodate the people in our cohort, and that's of course open to others as well. And the Project ACT initiative, the autonomous cohort tessellation, respectively for our cohort and then our peer organizations respectively. And I have talked about these in previous episodes, so I won't bore you with too much here. There are a few speaking is one of them. There are a few operational challenges to overcome. Innovating in this area in general is under the infrastructure umbrella, and it should be useful for us, whatever we innovate around, tackle problems, try to make things better, and so on. By the way, that is one of the tenets of Agile. People often complain about Agile. Oh, it doesn't work. I don't like the Scrum. And the original Agile Manifesto points out that you should always be examining your processes and try to make them better and work better for the people doing them. So that's part of it, that's kind of built in. But innovation in this area in general, under the infrastructure umbrella, should be useful for us. And in keeping with our basic approach, open source, open collaboration, and so on, we make these available for anyone else as well. So if Agile for Volunteers is useful, take it and run with it. It's designed around volunteers who may or may not show up again. And for cross-cohort collaboration, so it's easier for people who may want to contribute or collaborate on something, some commonality, like, hey, we're working on something that is similar. Maybe we can help each other, to make that interface a little bit easier so you don't spend too much time trying to figure out whether you can be helpful or collaborate, and figure out how. Like, what can we actually do and how can we do it to help each other? Facilitating messaging, updates, conversation, and more within our cohort and within our communities is an ongoing learning possibility as well. And that can extend well beyond Greater Vegas, especially if what we work on is noticed by our many visitors in the area or to the area. City as a showcase of innovation, perhaps. So yeah, we have 2.4 million, give or take, people in the Clark County in the greater Vegas area, and 38 million or so. Everybody will say more so far. I think, anyway, it's a lot of people. More than 10 times the population of people in this area visit rather than live here. So it's a lot of people to engage with. And then they can take ideas back home with them and say, hey, they got this thing in Vegas that truly is a smart city, powered by the people who live there. One of these days we'll have to revisit Project Sidewalk in Toronto. That did not go well. So the rest of it, grab some water here for the big finish. Chia seeds. You should definitely. I soak them overnight. 20 minutes, usually 20 minutes is what people recommend, but they're soft and the mucilage. That sounds like a horrible word, but it's just fiber. It's totally fine. Quite healthy, actually. The rest of it, the final section of today's episode. Thanks for hanging on. By the way, we do publish our audio programs through Spotify for creators, which is free. And then it gets distributed to the other places. So these are all free things, free outreach that we can do. We have our YouTube channel, which does free transcription to, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Transcription to transcripts. That's the word. I'm like, I know it sounds like transcription. So they're not perfect, but we do have a sort of an accessibility direction that we want to stay on. So publishing an audio program without a text version would be counterintuitive, counterproductive, counter value, counter something. So YouTube provides that. Nowadays, with artificial intelligence tools being what they are and always improving, it's likely that we can do some more interesting things in that regard to make sure that what we are working on is always open to participation and consumption by everyone, not just people with vision or hearing, like me. So including everyone is one of our one of the ideas that we have. I know it sounds crazy. Our own infrastructure is mostly digital and virtual at this point. It's cloud-based, involving web apps, the things that we're trying to build and so on. The usual stuff is, as one might find in today's modern world, right? Some banking, some filing, and did I write? Filing. It looked like filling. ILI. It's always like, is there a dot there? Some filing and statutory requirements like that physical address, the basic stuff. There is more, mostly around human interaction, not only getting the word out, but doing something that includes and involves the people once they get the word in the physical world, right? So actual meetups, venues, and things that, not trivial, which means co-creation and what comes of it. That means working with people who are your users, your customers, clients, interlocutors in general. Maybe they want to participate on working on initiatives and be a part of our cohort. Maybe they're just part of the greater community and they'd like to look over the fence, as the saying goes, and see what's going on. Maybe they'll participate in the Smarter Smart City Challenge. Anything's possible. Facilitating that in a useful way falls under our infrastructure plans, tools, and methods as well. So all of this is basically how we function as part of infrastructure. It's not necessarily a specific thing. Now, the MyMuni and Welcome initiatives are separate. They're not part of our infrastructure, but their functionality would be part of our infrastructure, kind of our interface with the world. So that's not as clear-cut a line, but then, that's how the world works sometimes, in gray areas. As we get more attention, and that is the plan, of course, and as we get more participation, and that is the challenge, of course, it makes obvious sense to apply co-creation principles internally, which is part of Agile, on which Agile for Volunteering, which is part of Agile on which Agile for Volunteers is based. The whole team approach, co-creation internally, everybody should be a part of, or be able to be a part of what we're working on. There is no your idea is not good enough. It's more, let's try it, that kind of thing. So whole team approach, everybody involved, co-creation. And that's great practice for working with the general population out in the world. If there is one thing we have learned in Vegas, it is a show me what you got culture across the board. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Finding the leading and cutting edge adopters has been a real challenge. And that's, an ongoing thing. The effort continues locally here in Greater Vegas and of course beyond. That's our Project Act initiative and all that goes into that. There is really no reason to say, no, we're in Vegas. We are not interested in what you're working on if you're not in Vegas. Frankly, that's silly. We have our work cut out for us, though. Ideally, the Civic Volunteer winter will thaw. I've talked about that in previous episodes. I think it kind of is. And more people will take an interest, not only in our cohort initiatives, not only in, but in our outreach efforts, including the upcoming year-long Smarter Smart City Challenge in January of 2027, and our infrastructure tools and methods, which we can use, evolve, and invent as we head in that direction. January fast approaches, and see what we can learn along the way. And I've talked about challengers and Volunteer for Vegas and some other things. So some of these things will come online in conjunction with this greater community outreach. Everything we're working on is either internal infrastructure, external infrastructure, or intended for the general population to make use of. So all of these, again, some gray areas between them. There's really no clear-cut line, right? If we can share information internally, we should be able to share it externally, and then maybe that, whatever we develop along those lines. Yes, there are blogs. Blogs have been around for a long time, but a lot of technology has evolved since. So if we can be innovative in some of the things that we are trying to accomplish, and we can expose that for everybody to make use of and try out and say, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool, then we'll find out where things go from there. And the Smarter Smart City Challenge will be something of a test of that, among other things. Anyway, I think that's a good enough place to leave things for today. So infrastructure, an ongoing thing, always important, always worthy of examination and re-examination, and maybe even some innovation now and then. On that note, me and my chia seeds will wish you the best. Thank you for listening as always. Thank you for your support, and do consider participating in the Smarter Smart City Challenge. Since we're moving that off of LinkedIn as well, or deprecating that on LinkedIn as well, the Smart City Vegas website will need some tune-up to be current. And then ideally, we'll start to get some outreach. We need to have people discover what's going on, and that's not happening on LinkedIn. So we'll check out the internets where the people are and see what happens. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your participation in this audio program today, in the past, and of course into the future. Take care. Bye-bye.